As I stand here in one of the beautiful areas of this country of ours, I reflect on the natural disposition of AmaXhosa I wrote about in my book, Triangle of 100 Years Wars. It's fascinating to think about how they managed to fight what became the longest unparalleled wars of resistance in Africa. And the fact that they defeated the British Army in 3 consecutive wars is beyond my imagination. You can see here behind me where they were fighting these wars, from the mountains of Ndabakandoda, the mountains of Matole, the mountains of Hawksbeck, the Winterberg Mountains, up to Katbeck. And our forebears, they were fighting here. But today I'm trying to dig deep into the natural disposition of AmaXhosa. Who were these people who were able to fight longest unparalleled wars of resistance for 9 years? What we find out when we dig deeper is the fact that in their approach at the time, AmaXhosa realized that their biggest enemy was the colonial encroachment, not the fellow Africans and the neighboring countries. They then used a strategy of defeat and integrate. What does that mean? The people like us, for example, I'm not an original umXhosa. Ndingumzulane. Amamvulane, amavundle, omaduna, amantshilibe, namangqosini, they were coming from Lesotho. AmaXhosa defeated us and integrated us. If you hear about the original Khoisan nations who were integrated by AmaXhosa during the reign of King Chiwo, today we call those people Amanqakhwane, Amagqwashu, Osukwini, Osthathu, Nogiqwa. But not only that, in the War of Mbolompo in 1828, they defeated Abantu. Today we call them Amamfengu, but these people were called Abambo. They were defeated and integrated by AmaXhosa. So that's number one, they used the strategy of defeat and integrate. 2, they had what I later define as the innovative mind and ability of adaptability. As they were fighting the colonial encroachment, resisting it since 1779, as these wars were proceeding, AmaXhosa gained ascendance because they began to learn about their enemies. They began to learn ways of neutralizing the firepower of the British Army. And we see this especially in the 3 successive defeats of the British Army in 1835, 1846, 1850. What AmaXhosa did, what is it that they did to defeat the British? 1, AmaXhosa decided to deploy small, agile armies in the battlefield. They didn't want to concentrate all their men in one area who were going to be easy victims of the British artillery. 2, they never allowed the British Army to settle and set up the artillery for attack. They always ambushed them on their way. 3, they deploy women as informers to monitor the movement of the British troops. 4, AmaXhosa developed supply lines where if they are fighting here in Tabazgamatol, they will have supply of food and everything from people coming from Ekon, Statarem, Middle Drift, Alice, Engqushwa, and so on. Were supplying food to the battlefield to maintain. That's why AmaXhosa were able to fight wars, because they had supply lines. Next one of the reasons why they were able to fight for a number of years, they only kept a small army and rotating it. So they came up with the idea of military rotation. But the most terrible strategy they used, which was terrible to the enemy, the British were very, very fearful about this, and they hated it, was the fact that AmaXhosa applied what we call simultaneous attacks at the same time in the whole area. where they will say, for example, on the 4th day from today, we'll launch attacks at 3 a.m. in the early hours, starting from, for example, Gqeberha, eBhofolo, KwaMaqoma, Queenstown, Stutterheim, East London, Mthatha. You'll get a situation where at 3 a.m. in the early hours, there's attacks in all these places. And that's what actually finished off the British Army. They couldn't deal with that, where you've got attacks everywhere at the same time. It overstretched the army. It rendered the artillery obsolete. There's nothing they could do. And then the last part was their natural disposition, AmaXhosa, the way they were created or the way they developed in these wars. For example, the missionaries hated Prince Ndlambe because they are saying Prince Ndlambe was a man who would keep you guessing. You will never know where does Prince Ndlambe stand. That was his ability to survive. They didn't like King Yinsa because he never maintained eye contact with you as a way of keeping his kingship and authority as a royal aristocrat. You also look at his son, King Sahili, when they told him that King Yinsa has died. Sahili never showed any remorse, any emotion, because they had that ability to conceal the emotions. You look at King Sandile, the one blow man. You look at how, in a war that was meant to last for 3 months, led by Lieutenant General John Hare, the Knight of Hanover, who was planning to be here for 3 months. But Sandile finished that war in 1 day. How the power, the pace, and the precision of the excessively overwhelming attack that he used. It dismantled the British Army in 1 day. That's what Mostert defined it as the worst humiliating defeat the British Army had ever suffered in the African continent. You look at Nkosi Maqoma, he was a specialist in terms of catching the enemy off guard. Maqoma believed that if you're in a war, you must attack in the early hours. That's why they used to call him Ujongo Msobomvu. So today, as we are walking here in one of these beautiful battlefields of our forebears, we thought that it's important to reflect, especially in relation to my book, Triangle of 100 Years Wars. Thank you.